Today I felt really driven to go talk to my Buddhist monk friends. I met with Ajahn Bryan, who's the American monk on the left there. The middle monk is the JP for short, but he's the master of Vipassana meditation. So I went out to the temple in Albany, Oregon, and had a very long discussion with Ajahn Bryan. He prefers not to be known that well, but I am sharing a screenshot I took of one of his live feeds talking about meditation, a little bit about Vipassana. But I spent all day just talking about where I'm at this point in my understanding, how nothing excites me or impresses me anymore, getting more confirmation from people that understand what that means, as we all will reach that. So here's a little bit with Ajahn Bryan.
Panya, which means wisdom. And we could say that this is really kind of the goal initially of the practice that we do, is to develop this wisdom, because it's that wisdom that helps us uproot the causes of our suffering. So stepping into meditation with kind of that perspective gives us a framework for what we're trying to achieve, and then kind of helps bring some clarity to why we use the methods that we do. So broadly speaking, you could say that meditation kind of leans in one of two directions. And the first one we refer to as samatha. Samatha means to settle. So a good analogy to see this is if you have water, and let's say a bucket of water that's got dirt stirred into it, the water becomes impossible to see through. It's dirty, it's dark. You can put your hand in the water, you can't even see your hand. If you can sort of leave the water alone for a while, its tendency is that the dirt will settle on its own. And if you attempt to speed that up, maybe try to push the dirt down to the bottom of the bucket or pull the dirt out somehow, you're just going to stir it up more. So it's like the more you try to get rid of the dirt, the more you stir it up. Samatha is this way. We sort of let its natural craziness settle. The second aspect, or second lean in meditation, we call Vipassana. And the term, it's disputed, big surprise amongst scholars. They don't have a complete agreement on it. But in general, it comes from the word pasati, which is to see. And the V at the beginning can be emphatic, so it's like you really see, like seeing deeply into things. It can also imply seeing things sort of broken apart, so like dissecting your experience in some way or deconstructing your experience. It can imply a specialness in the way that we see, so that we're seeing in a unique or a different way than our ordinary way. And all of the above, I think, are pretty good definitions for Vipassana. The idea is that we're not looking at things in our ordinary habitual way, but we start training ourselves to see them in a very deep and a very powerful way, a very special way. Now, the Buddha emphasized the importance of both of these qualities. So it's not that we per se like favor one, although typically speaking, you could say we kind of do favor the Vipassana angle, or the development of insight or wisdom, but we really kind of need both, because the samatha calms the mind, stabilizes the mind, cleans the mind, purifies the mind, and that is making the mind a very powerful tool. Just like if you have a knife and it's rusty and dull, it doesn't do much good. If you clean off the rust, you sharpen it, you get a nice keen edge on there, you can cut into things very, very easily. Similarly, like with the windshield on the car, if it's dirty, you've got mud splatters on it, you can't see. But when that's cleaned up, you can drive safely. So samatha sort of gets the mind conditioned to be able to develop the wisdom. And in the suttas, that's what the Buddha says, is that samatha essentially develops the mind, whereas vipassana develops wisdom. So we use these two together. When you bring attention to singular objects, like when we sit and we observe the movements of the breathing, or we walk, we observe the simple movements of the feet, it's not like that's all that's going on, but we purposely restrict our you could say, our field of awareness to just a very simple, small thing. And that allows the mind to have less agitation to it. To these simple things, the mind will tend to settle down. This is what we would talk about in the practice as the Vipassana, as the Samatha angle. As we watch those things and we're noting clearly to ourselves the movements, and the mind is with the movements themselves, we're observing the breathing rising and falling, and we're clearly aware of what that movement is and what's going on. That's where we're developing the Vipassana angle. So they work with the quality of samatha and the importance of developing wisdom through Vipassana. So in general, we want to first of all address that daily life has everything to do with how meditation develops. So that's why we really make a strong point to try to follow the precepts, which means to refrain from killing, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct. This is generally adultery, but also non-consensual relations or relations with minors. This includes also the precept against telling lies and the precept against using intoxicants. These basic 5 precepts are sort of the course level of what you could call like mental misbehaving. So when we kill, when we steal, when we do any of these things, they're rooted in mental states that are not very good for us. They're rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion. And so acting in those ways strengthens those tendencies of mind. When you go to sit down then and meditate, you start noticing the effects of that on the mind. People that don't meditate don't usually notice it, which is why the idea of like following precepts or developing a moral practice seems sometimes kind of out of place with meditation. But when you come and you sit and you practice, you start to see that all of the things we do throughout the day heavily affect the state of mind that we have when we meditate. So following the 5 precepts is the basis of just getting the mind to start settling down. In the Eightfold Path, in addition to this, we also see meditation with 3 main qualities, one of which is our effort. So this means that we start training ourselves that when we see something, we hear something, we smell something, we taste something, we experience something through our senses, we're clearly aware of what the senses are. So for example, you see something, our usual reaction is we see it, right away we like it or we dislike it. But we start training ourselves to just be aware that we're seeing it. If we smell a fragrance, maybe we like it, maybe we dislike it, but we start training ourselves just to be aware that there's a fragrance. When we taste a food, again, usually we immediately like or dislike what we taste. We start training ourselves to just be aware that we're tasting. And we bring this development into our meditation practice. So when we first start and we sit, for example, and we observe rising, falling, in the beginning when our mind hears, let's say, a sound, we just kind of notice that it happened and we bring back our attention to the rise and fall of the breathing. Maybe we think about something, again, we return to the rise and fall of the breathing. But with time, we start training ourselves to identify what comes to the senses. So rather than just disregarding it, we start training ourselves that when we hear something, we know it as hearing, see something, we know it as seeing, smell something, we know it as smelling. And developing this method of noting the contact point of our senses starts training us in kind of this letting go, not getting caught up in things, but just learning to let them go. Secondly, the context of what we pay attention to is really important. And this is where we get into what we call mindfulness, which comes from the Pali term sati. Mindfulness literally means to remember or to recollect. So again, when we breathe, we're recollecting that there's breathing occurring. When we walk, by being aware of the footsteps, we're recollecting that we're walking. These practices also help us in recollecting the presence of the body. And when we meditate, we can be aware of a number of different things. Obviously, the body itself, the posture that we sit in. For example, we notice sitting, or we notice walking, standing, etc. We can become aware of the sort of feeling tone that's in the body, so that sort of pleasant unpleasantness that tends to endure there. We can become aware of the mental states themselves. So for example, if the mind is feeling kind of greedy, we can know that greed is present in the mind. If we start feeling angry, frustrated, we can know that anger and frustration is in the mind. When we can't concentrate, our mind is in 8,000 directions, we can know that the scatteredness is in the mind, and so on. And then fourthly, we can understand various mental states that arise and how to work with them. So how to increase or decrease the different mental states that come for kind of that long-term goal, again, of freeing ourselves from suffering. So when we apply our mind to these various things, this is what the Buddha talks about as satipatthana, or developing awareness of the four foundations. So we train ourselves to be aware of the body, aware of that sort of tone of pleasant, unpleasant mind inside, the various mental states that arise, and then working with developing various mental states, wholesome and unwholesomely.
So after a year of practicing this up in the mountains 4 to 6 hours a day, what this does by bringing these awarenesses to your attention is over time you'll start questioning, who's the one watching this? Who's the one feeling anger? And just noticing the anger, which, by the way, that takes you out of the anger. I'm angry. I'm feeling angry. What is this feeling angry thing? You do it enough times and you see more evidence of the seer inside, that you are not your anger, you're not your mind, you're not your ears, you're not your eyes, your nose, your mouth. There's something much deeper inside of us that's observing this when you don't participate. And this is where Vipassana meditation, as he's not stating in here, but the Buddha said it's the meditation to enlightenment, bringing you so present that you're aware of everything that's coming and going, whether it's objects, mood, motion, dream. And doing this long enough, you start to see there's something else much greater than all events that are happening to you.
So this is what you could think of as the object of the meditation. And I mention that because often meditation techniques will revolve around just one simple object, and that's kind of all you ever do. You just always are staying with this one thing, one thing, one thing. And the effect that has is that it sort of anchors the mind at one point and makes it kind of like you're sleeping. Eventually the mind just sort of shuts down, you lose sense of things, and you're kind of in this coma. With Vipassana, the idea is that you're not trying to lock yourself into one point. You kind of use that initially in a skillful way to quiet the mind and settle it down somewhat, but then you're opening yourself up to observe, what is this experience that I'm having and what's going on here? And learning to discern that the mind has that tendency to get involved with it. It starts liking and disliking everything. And so we start training ourselves to see both these levels of the body and the various mental states that come and go. As we practice this way, initially, no, but as we practice this way with time, we start seeing the causation of our discomfort. So we can see, for example, that when the mind isn't grasping at things, when it isn't trying to hold on to things, when it's not trying to control things, it's actually relatively peaceful. It's not having any desires, it's relatively peaceful. It's not trying to control and micromanage life, it's pretty peaceful. And we start to see that every time it does reach out and try to control or reach out and try to manipulate or force things, there's a general discomfort there, there's a stress there. And we start seeing that, in fact, every time the mind gets involved with this craving and this desire, there is that stress there. And we start to understand what that dukkha or suffering is that the Buddha talks about. So in the end point, meditation doesn't cease for you having, for example, physical sensations of pain, physical difficulties, the normal stresses of aging and wear and tear on the body. But what does gradually get destroyed is the mental attachment and suffering that comes from that mental attachment. So that's what the goal of the practice is to train the mind essentially to let go of everything to the degree that it ceases to suffer on account of it. So pain of the body is a fact versus an emotion, in a sense. Difficulty in life becomes more of a fact than an emotional reaction, and we just see things as they are.
I bring this video up because I'm at a crossroad in my life now. Soon to start opening a wine and beer bar with the new owners, dear friends of mine, and I've had to visualize what that's going to be like. Am I ready to be in one place for several hours a day, helping create, and am I willing to talk about auspicious things, which I've done before in the same type of setting, which turned out to be magnetic. How many people crave to talk about auspicious things versus just, hey, it's raining out, go Bears, cool cars, like I've always been into. And so there's a little bit of a torn, as I've made a commitment to these people I adore, they're family to me. And so I can sit and visualize, am I really going to do this? And well, I'm going to do it. First, I committed to it. And second of all, you never know the answers until you do it. I anticipate it's life's way of pulling me out now and talking about these things on this very, very long journey in life in my study since I was 14. And maybe I'm mature enough now in the fact that I don't really want to talk about these things anymore, like I did when I was all into it, is maybe the right time. So I look forward to it. I don't know what to expect. There is a side of me always leaning towards becoming a Buddhist monk, ordaining full-time. I've been right on the brink of it 3 times in my life. And but honestly, I don't like the routines that they have. I don't want to study for hours. I'm tired of studying. I can't even read owner's manuals anymore. I'm so exhausted with reading and studying and all these things. And they have 227 rules that I have to be willing to let go. It isn't just being left alone quiet and meditating that I so strongly desire, but yet something hasn't come to fruition. So the journey continues, and I'll continue sharing it because some of you are going through the very same thing, and that's really the only reason at this point why I'm still doing these videos. I do enjoy the creative process, but even creativity as far as painting and making videos are hitting a spot in me now to where it's like, what's the point? So, to be continued. I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it. Very well explained.